about low taxation. So even though we do have taxes, minimal tax, and even though we have a lot of international pressure to introduce more corporate tax, you see that this is one of the features why a lot of people come to the Bahamas in order to do business. We also have a lot of investment products that people like. And of course, our regulations, we try to keep them in the financial sector up to date, as simple as possible, so that people can read them, interpret it. And they're also very friendly in terms of driving business towards the Bahamas. To complement all of that, we would also boast our telecommunication system, the partnership between the public sector and the private sector. And as we would have spoke about in the very first part of the class, we talk about the advantages of living here in the Bahamas, becoming a permanent resident, investing in the Bahamas, or putting in an application to get a work permit. And everything is about the lifestyle. So when you're here in New Providence, you could see that there are certain sections where the lifestyle of these international investors entice them to stay here. And that's all a part of the products that we have to offer to the international arena. Any comments? No? So one of the most sought after product that we offer, that's a part of our wealth management, asset management structure, is the International Business Company, the IBC. And everybody knows that the IBC is one of the preferred products, and other offshore jurisdictions have created their own type of IBC. And all it means is that it is a corporate structure, one that is very flexible and is very easy to use and is very easy to incorporate quickly and is not expensive. What also makes an IBC attractive is that there is not a lot of filing requirements. And so for the international investor or businessman, that is one of the advantages of incorporating IBCs. So you would see they would have a structure where there is an LLC at the very top, and then they have IBCs holding assets. So that brings the point is how do you apply an IBC? Why would you want to incorporate an IBC? So an IBC is you can hold assets in an IBC. You can use it for investment funds. You could use it for a shipping company, captive insurance, private trust company, for a family office, or any other application. E-business, joint ventures. It's a very flexible company. So one of the things about an IBC is in the Bahamas and in other jurisdictions that have the similar product like an IBC, it must have a registered agent. And a registered agent is a company that is licensed by the central bank under the Banks and Trust Companies Act, or it could be a corporate service provider licensed by the Securities Commission under the Financial and Corporate Service Providers Act. The key thing about being an agent is that you have to know who the owners of the company are, and you also have to maintain all the KYC on the ultimate beneficial owner and the directors. In addition, an IBC must have a registered office in the Bahamas. So these are services that the Bahamas offers to the beneficial owners of IBCs. And of course, being a registered agent, you have the responsibility of uploading every year the beneficial owners of that IBC in the government's database. So some of the highlights of an IBC is that it only requires one director. It doesn't have to have a corporate secretary. No audits are required. There is no statutory filing. There's no filing of annual return. There is a procedure for dissolution of the company winding up, and you'd normally see that in the newspapers. You see the little box, and it gives you the name of the company, and it says that it's winding up. And of course, you can get a certificate of good standing, which normally you would need when you're doing business to make sure that the company is legitimate. The act itself has been amended, and so your company name can end not only in LTD, but it also can be in GmbH. It could be in SA. It could be in INC. Your name can be in words, or it can be in figures. It can also be in a foreign language. You can re-domicile an IBC to another jurisdiction. Or you could continue another company here in the Bahamas, such as an LLC. You can have a foreign registration and register it here in the Bahamas. So for exchange control purposes, it's not required unless, of course, that IBC is going to do business with a resident of the Bahamas, or if the person is deemed to be resident of the Bahamas for exchange control purpose, and they want to purchase some shares or securities in the IBC, then of course exchange control is required. So an IBC can be limited by shares or by guarantee, just like any regular company. It's an unlimited company. It can also be a segregated account company, which means that it will apply again to the Securities Commission in order to be a segregated company. So under a segregated company, you could create separate accounts with assets and liabilities. And each account is separate in that if someone wanted to sue SAC 001, the assets in that account cannot be applied to the assets in SAC 002. A segregated account or SAC is not a legal person, and it is distinct from the SAC itself. So any person who wants to deal with a SAC, you have to be able to inform them that that is what it is and identify the SAC and which transaction it's related to. So all assets linked to a particular SAC are held by the company in a separate fund, and it doesn't become a part of the general account of the company. Any rights and obligations of account owners in a SAC, they're normally contained in a governing instrument. So any company that is registered as a SAC must be governed by the Companies Act or the IBC Act. And that company has to be engaged in the business of investment funds, issuing securities or insurance. It has to be a subsidiary of a bank, or it has to be engaged in a business where the ministers responsible for companies prescribed has subscribed a primary regulator. No company that is licensed under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act can register as a SAC. So a SAC must file a request with the registrar to be registered as a SAC, containing the prescribed information and accompanied by the consent of the primary regulator of the relevant business. Where the company has conducted business prior to the application for registration, a statutory declaration containing prescribed information must also be filed with the primary regulator, along with the evidence of the consent of 75% of the intended account holders and 75% of the would-be creditors of the SAC. And the registrar will issue a certificate of registration on completion of registration. So from estate planning and wealth management, corporate structures, you have the IBC, you have the segregated accounts, and then you have the trust. So remember now, trust is a legal and unique relationship. It's where the owners of those assets, known as the settlor or the grantor, he gives his legal title to the trustee for him to administer and manage the assets for the benefit of his beneficiaries. So normally the first step is to establish first the assets, who the beneficiaries are, and then draft a trust deed, providing for the provisions of how they want the trust to be set up. The Bahamas boasts one of the best trust legislations in the world. And that's the Trustee Act 1998. In the trust instrument itself, including all of its amendments, it gives a settlor or donor the power to direct how they would like the funds to be invested. It also gives them greater protection in terms of investing. It allows for a protector as someone who will advise the trustees when they're exercising their discretion. Once a trustee follows the instruction from a settlor as to how they would wish their assets to be invested, then the trustee is not liable if there's any loss. The trust legislation also gives maintenance and advancement powers. And so a trustee is able to set up funds for minors and to take care of minors or persons who are mentally or physically incapacitated. The trustee also has the power to accumulate income. And the legislation also provides for flight clauses in the event that there is any political upheaval. Of course, a settlor can decide to transfer their trust from the Bahamas to another jurisdiction, as long as the legislation is similar to the one in the Bahamas. So one good thing about a trust is that once a trust is created, it gives you advantage of not having to wait for probate. Because once executed, then the trust takes effect. Any questions or comments so far? No?
Can an individual actually put their assets in to hide? Okay, can an individual hide their assets in a trust fund so that their spouse or their family members won't get it?
Why you use the word hide? Why you say hide?
I mean, protect.
Yes, that's a better word. So let's just say you have what? A business.
Like family members, everybody know that I own like this big company. I got X amount of dollars in my account.
Mm-hmm.
And my oldest child is off to school, and he or she doesn't need for anything. But you still have people out there like family members who know, well, I have X amount of dollars that was left by me by one of my family members who passed. And I decided to open up this trust to say, in the event something happens to me, I still want my son or daughter to have something, even though they don't want for anything, right? I guess my question really is to you is, can my family members fight my son or daughter for the assets that are in the trust? Do they have an argument to the court to say, well, I put all of my assets in the trust just to hide it from them, for them not to get anything?
No. Okay, so let's step back. Let me give you a little bit more information. Now we did administration of estates earlier. So there's two ways to create a trust. You could create a trust within your will, or you can go today or tomorrow and walk into a trust company and create a trust. There's two ways. Now, if you go the route of creating a trust within your will, like when we did that section, a will can be challenged. But it can be challenged on certain grounds. Won't say to hide. It's either undue influence, which means that they're saying that whomever you left it to influence you in deciding who gets it, or they could say it was fraudulent. Now, if you decide today that you want to go into a company, a trust company, and create a trust, you advise the trustee what your assets are. Remember, you have to be the legal owner of those assets, which means you must have both legal and equitable title to those assets. Then you have to tell the trustee, this is whom I want to benefit from it. So let's say you have 3 children. Once you agree that you want to establish the trust, once you have the requisite documents for those assets so that the trustee can take legal title, you no longer own those assets.
Okay.
The only persons who can bring an action against your trust are your beneficiaries.
Okay.
They can go behind the trust. Now, other than that, would have to be if you have some creditors. And the creditors can only bring an action if they're saying that you put the assets within the trust in order not to pay them.
Right, okay. Okay.
So those are the things you have. So that's why you see a lot of people when they come here for wealth management, they set up a trust. And they state who their beneficiaries are, and they put their assets within the trust. So now, you yourself, let's say if you wanted to do it today, you can make yourself a beneficiary.
Really?
Yes, you can. So a lot of the persons who come here, who set up trusts, some of them are not married yet. Some of them are married. Some of them are married and have children, but they make themselves a beneficiary. Because remember now, if you don't make yourself a beneficiary, then you don't receive anything from the trust.
Right. Oh, yes. The trust can pay you what it depends on how you have it set up.
Exactly. But if you are not a beneficiary, you will not be paid anything.
Okay. Okay.
So that's one product that we offer, and a lot of foreigners come all the way to the Bahamas just to establish their trust.
Is that irrevocable? Like, can that be undone?
No, not that it can be undone. That it depends on the terms and condition within the trust. It can be revocable or irrevocable.
Mm.
Because in some trusts, you can have the clause whereby the beneficiaries can bring the trust to an end.
Mm.
And you could have some trusts established where the settlor as the beneficiary says that this trust is only supposed to go for a certain length of time.
So do a person has to have some type of wealth or some type of, I could say, asset, some amount of asset, some value to say, let me establish a trust? Is there a threshold?
No, what determines that is whether or not you can pay the fees.
Mm.
So you have to pay the fees until you die.
Yeah, the fees are going to be coming out of the trust.
Oh, Jesus, suppose you.
But assets have to be equivalent. Don't forget now, these people who are coming, these people have businesses all around the world. So they're not establishing a trust with $50,000. They're establishing a trust with millions.
Yeah.
That's still a good chunk of coming out your state, though. Does it go by percentage or a set fee, or it depends?
No, it goes by ad valorem. So it goes by the value as it increases. Don't forget now, within the trust, there are assets. Below the trust, you have companies that are holding businesses. All of those are generating. So let's just say you have company A. Company A is probably held within a structure whereby as it generates money, then it has to declare dividends. When it declares dividends, those dividends go up to the trust. And then the trustee then makes a decision based upon the type of trust that you have created. So you could say, you could create a trust and say, my daughter Sarah is to receive at the age of 25 a lump sum of $500,000. Or you could say, my son John is to receive after completion of university the sum of $750,000 to establish his business.
So question, in that case, then the fees would be deducted from that lump sum. Then how does that pay for
No,
it?
the fees come from the income that comes into the account.
I guess I'm a bit lost because you can have assets that don't generate funds. So if that's the case, how do you pay for the trust administration then?
Then you're gonna have to deposit funds and pay.
Okay.
Because a trust company is not gonna hold your assets for free.
No, nothing is free.
No, because don't forget now, another thing you have to think about is taxation. Taxes also have to be paid. So there's accounting and reporting to be done. Now we also have another trust called a purpose trust. And these are set up for a particular purpose. But the purpose can't be contrary to public policy or unlawful. So you could establish a purpose trust just to hold shares of a private company. Or you could have a purpose trust just for philanthropic or charitable purposes. You could establish a purpose trust just to buy a particular asset or finance a business transaction. So that's the IBC. You could have a segregated account. You can establish a trust. You can also establish a purpose trust for a particular purpose, or you can establish a foundation. And foundation are for, normally they establish them for private, commercial, or charitable purposes. But it has to be for something lawful. Now, the difference between a foundation and a trust is you got to look at the terminology and how it is structured. Remember what I said, a trust has a settlor or a donor, a trustee, and beneficiaries. Now, when you come to a foundation, then you have a founder and you have a council. So go ahead. Someone's going to say something.
No, Masacha, just wondering, I don't have this. I don't know why. I'm looking and looking. It'll be too much of an inconvenience for you to send this to me so I could follow it.
What you don't have?
What you reading from?
You don't have a document in your packet called the Investors Resource Guide?
Okay, so I didn't pick up the packet. So whatever was emailed is what I have. Okay, all right. So that explains it. Thank you.
Okay. So a foundation, you could use it for estate planning, tax planning. You could use it for preserving family wealth. You could use it for segregating assets, perpetuating corporate governance philosophy, subordinating debts, separating voting and economic benefits, investing in private companies with a poor economic performance, owning private trust companies, and establishing charities. You can also use a foundation where you have anti-forced heirship laws and creditor protection. So the founder of a foundation can be a natural person like you and I, or it can be a legal person, a company. Or you can have a nominee founder. A founder has to appoint a secretary or an agent, and that person is responsible for carrying out the due diligence. Now, the secretary or the agent, again, has to be licensed under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act or under the Financial Corporate Service Provider Act. The foundation council, the members of that council do not need to be in the Bahamas. And their function is to ensure that the foundation and the officers comply with the charter and the articles. So a trust has a trust deed. A foundation has charter and articles. The council is entitled to access to the books and records of the foundation. They have to be informed of all meetings of the officers, and they need to attend and be heard, but not vote at those meetings. They should be included in the circulation of foundation documents and be informed of any delegation of powers to an officer. The foundation can also have a protector or a committee of protectors. The charter may reserve powers to the founder. So the same way in the trust deed can reserve powers to the settlor or donor. And of course, the charters may appoint other officers in addition to the secretary, but their job would be relatively just administrative. Now, another product that we offer that is a part of the structure of wealth management is the executive entity. And an executive entity is a legal entity and it performs executive functions. So that means that the powers and the duties of an executive, administrative, supervisory, fiduciary, and office holding nature. It institutionalizes the governance of wealth structures and other entities in an entity with limited liability that's just designed for that purpose. So you could use an executive entity as a protector, or you could use it as a director, or you could use an executive entity as a shareholder. So when you read a lot about the products that we offer in terms of wealth management tools, you'll hear a lot of the international arena talking about these structures are opaque. These structures are created to launder money. These structures hide who is the ultimate beneficial owner. Versus from our point of view, what we're actually doing is structuring the wealth of these individuals in a manner in which it becomes more tax efficient and is also easier to administer. So for an executive entity, it has a charter, and the charter doesn't have to be filed or registered in a public registry. The charter will contain the name of the founder and any other information such as the purpose of the executive entity. It can talk about how you remove an officer or a council member. The charter could provide for the reservation of rights to the founder and may specify higher or lower levels of exonerations and indemnifications than contained in the Act. An executive entity agent must be appointed, which means it must be licensed under the Financial Corporate and Service Providers Act. A trust company under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act. The charter must provide for the appointment of an officer or a consul. It may provide for the appointment of both officers and consuls. So the executive entity is established by a charter, which is signed by the founder, and it attains the status of a legal entity. So just like an international business company, an IBC is a legal entity, so is an executive entity. But remember, a trust is a legal arrangement. So one of the distinguishing features of an executive entity is that there is no specific minimum capital to be maintained by an executive entity, but it must maintain assets necessary to carry out its executive business. So as an executive entity, it can hold shares, securities, and other ownership interests in a legal person in whose business is to carry out executive functions. The executive function of an executive entity may be performed only in relation to entities, trusts, or other arrangements that are domiciled or registered in the Bahamas or any other jurisdiction that's a part of the first schedule in the Financial Transaction Reporting Act. So A next product that we offer is private trust companies. So a private trust company is incorporated under the laws of the Bahamas. And what it does is it provides trusteeship to a defined class of trusts. PTCs are governed under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act. So a private trust company can either be incorporated as an international business company, an IBC, or as a Companies Act company. The memorandum and articles of a PTC says that it acts as a trustee. It could be for one trust, or it could be for more than one trust. And it's created by a designated person. And that designated person is named in the designating instrument. So the designated person is an individual, and that individual is named in the designating instrument. If there's more than one designated person, they have to be all blood relatives. If they are deceased, and his trust can be established by a testamentary disposition. So the designating instrument, it names the designated person or persons, and that is kept at the office of the registered representative. The PTCs do not require directors to possess expertise in trust administration. Doesn't require a fidelity bond because trust companies required to have a fidelity bond. Doesn't require an annual audit. Doesn't require capital exceeding $5,000. Now it must have a registered representative. And that's a separate legal entity, either a licensee under the central bank, or it can be a financial corporate service provider. That registered representative must also be resident in the Bahamas, and it can provide the services of a secretary, a director, or a Bahamas agent. The purpose of the registered representative is to ensure that the PTC is established for a lawful purpose and that it operates as a PTC. It must have a minimum share capital of $50,000, and it has to retain copies of certain documents in relation to the PTC. So there's certain information that must be maintained and verified. And that is, who is the settlor? Who's providing the funds? The name of the protector, the name of any other designated person, and any person with a vested interest under the trust. And of course, the registered representative has to report if there's any suspicious activity. A PTC can also have a special director. That person doesn't have to be in the Bahamas, but they must have a good reputation, possess at least 5 years of experience in a discipline relevant to trust administration. So having a PTC, what distinguishes it from other wealth tools is that it has its own legislation. Just like how the Trustee Act has its own legislation, the same way an executive entity has its own legislation, the foundation has its own legislation, the private trust company has its own legislation. So once you have a PTC, they are restricted from carrying out any other business other than that of trusteeship to a trust or a group of trusts created by a designated person. A PTC must not amend its memo and arts, is not allowed to solicit trust business, and it has to comply with the yearly compliance regulations and fees. If it fails to do that, it faces a fine of $5,000. Now, I know you would have heard a lot out in the western area of the island, a lot of family offices coming up. And family office try to provide to its clients all of the tools and services that they need in order to manage their wealth. So it deals with taxation, it deals with distribution planning, it talks about dealing with charitable giving, giving donations to different places. It talks about trust, if you want to create a trust. Looking at insurance needs. Looking to see if there's any accounting services, audits that need to be done, any corporate governance. So the family office provides all of those wealth management tools in one and as a one-stop shop. Any comments?
Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming with all you just said. Because I'm still
Oh, you
confused,
mean
like
the
why,
products?
yeah, why would you choose one over the other?
But it all depends on what you want to do. Now,
Mhm.
if you're coming in and you just want, okay, if you want, let's say you have assets like the example we used earlier, and you have children. Everything depends on the purpose for which you want to establish your wealth management tool.
Mhm.
So say you have a lot of income generating assets all over the world. You have children. No one knows when they're going to die. The first thing is, if you write a will, remember we did wills already. It means that if you were to die, your children and your spouse is going to have to wait for probate. Probate may take a year, 2 years, 3 years, because in every jurisdiction where you have an asset, your attorney will have to apply for resealing in every jurisdiction. Then, of course, you could have persons who want to challenge the will. And so the will then moves into a contentious matter and have to go before the court.
Mhm.
So you could decide that I don't want to go that route. I don't want to put my wife and my children through all of that, or my husband and children through that, or my brothers and my sisters through that. If that's the family that you have, you can say, guess what? I'm tired of running from this jurisdiction to that jurisdiction, dealing with all of this business. Let me put it in a trust. And I give the trustees the power to distribute whatever income comes into the trust from the various companies. And I'd include myself as a beneficiary. So my
Right.
benefit,
So
go ahead.
it's just the funds or the surplus funds, I should say, generated from those businesses in other
Yeah,
jurisdictions, correct?
yeah.
Okay.
But it's the whole thing about all of these tools is this. You can structure your assets in a way where it is advantageous to you, not just in terms of wealth distribution or preservation of wealth, but also for tax planning. And so you would say,
You said you can add a company within one of these products, right?
yeah,
In another jurisdiction?
yes. People have,
How,
okay, people have structures where at the very top of the structure, there's a trust. And let's just say that trust is here in the Bahamas at the very top. And the beneficiary of that trust is Keturah and her 3 children and her spouse. Underneath that trust, she can have IBCs. And each one of those IBCs can hold an asset. So let's just say she's in a business. IBC number 1 holds her supermarket business.
when you say
IBC,
hold, what do you mean? Because I hear people saying it, but I don't actually know what that means.
what that means is that the shares of the company is held by that IBC. That IBC owns it.
Can they own all of the shares? I would assume so.
Yeah.
And if they don't own all, then if they only own a portion, or do they
They
have
own
to own all of the
portion,
shares?
right? Then the portion that Keturah owns is what she'll be entitled to.
Okay.
So take a company. A company has, let's say the company has 3 shareholders. At the end of the year, when that company, don't forget now, company has its own management. It has its own board. And then it has shareholders. When that company decides that, okay, at the end of the year, this is what we made, we're going to declare dividends. When they declare dividends, the shareholders know what percentage that they're going to get. So let's just say Keturah's percentage in the business is 20%. So she knows she's going to get 20%. That 20% moves from that company and is taken up through another company and then to her trust company. The trustee then, based on the trust deed, decides what is going to give to the beneficiaries of that trust.
Okay, 2 questions. So how often, I guess, is that distributed? Is that annually, quarterly, or just at the end of?
It depends on how Keturah set it up.
Right. And then what if a company doesn't have shares?
Okay. So if it doesn't have shares, then
And
there
then, like,
won't
if
be.
it's like a partnership or something,
No, you could
maybe.
have a company that doesn't have shares. But the
Mhm.
thing is that normally that means that whatever is invested in the company is like what they say is that, okay, I would pledge 50,000 in the event that the company needs money. But you're not gonna have a structure like that in wealth management. Because your entities have to be generating monies in order to pay.
Right, that's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah. So normally the kind that you're talking about is where you would have non-profits.
Right, that was going to be my next question with foundations. Like, why would you set up a foundation? Like, I don't understand why.
Why
Because if
would
you're setting it up for charity purposes, you could just donate the funds directly from your personal account, can you not? Like, I don't understand why you set up a foundation.
Yeah, but see, the thing about it is that I may set up a foundation, right? But that doesn't mean that when I set up the foundation, the money goes right away. It's not create a foundation and then tomorrow pay it out. Because you're gonna take the assets and you're gonna try to get some kind of return on the assets to build up to what you want in order to give away.
But you can do that outside of a foundation as well.
Yes, but you want to protect your assets. Everything has to do with protection and taxation.
But protected from who though? It's a donation. I'm stuck on that. I don't understand.
Okay. Whenever someone has assets, it's either creditors or there are family members or there are business partners who are trying to get those assets.
Mm.
And so you put them within structures. Now, the difference between a foundation and a trust is that in a trust, the trustee takes the title to those property.
Mm-hmm.
Once you put your assets in a trust, you no longer have title to those properties. The only thing that you will have is if you make yourself a beneficiary. Then you wait for distribution. But in a founder, you're not giving away your legal title to your property.
Right. Well, when you said foundation, when you first said it, the first one that came to my mind was Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Like, why was that set up?
The who?
Bill and Melinda Gates.
Oh, I saw that on, I can't remember. I think there's a show on Netflix when David Letterman is asking her about it.
Mm.
I don't know. Her name is Melinda.
Mm-hmm.
So must ask a quick question.
Go ahead.
So a trust can be dissolved once it serves its purpose, but a foundation cannot?
What do you mean served its purpose?
Like
That's
like the purpose trust.
Yeah, the purpose trust can be dissolved once it's served its purpose, then it's finished.
But what about a foundation?
Once the assets have dissipated, then it's finished.
Okay, because I know sometimes we have some like how I don't know, that's Tara, I don't know who just talk about the foundation. Sometimes they create a foundation maybe to help other people out. Maybe like to help with charity and different stuff like that. So that's why I asked if that could be dissolved, like once all the funds are already depleted. What kind of foundation be dissolved?
So the foundation is non-profit. It's non-profit. So the Melinda one is to fight poverty, disease, and inequity in the world. That's what her foundation is all about. So she's all about in Africa.
But they would have used their assets to initially fund that
Yeah.
foundation, correct?
She would have used her assets.
But also to Masacha, like in the States, they use these foundations to filter money, like they could pay themselves and it's not taxable. That's why these rich people set up all these foundations as well.
Yes.
You get tax breaks, even like credit unions over here, churches. Once they call themselves non-profit, they get certain concessions. They don't have certain taxes.
Right.
It's all
Now,
garbage to me.
nonprofits here in the Bahamas has its own legislation.
Right.
Such as churches and stuff. Those are non-profit organizations. But
But
then you,
I don't see how you non-profit if you making money. I don't understand that.
but when you make money in a found, what you mean? You talking about the church?
No, okay, like credit unions are now operating as banks. They're earning interest.
But
They
don't forget,
operate.
a credit union is not a non-profit organization.
Well, you remember they were categorized. Now that changed.
That changed, yes. They're now regulated.
Oh, it has changed. Okay, so they supervised by the central bank now.
They have to meet all the requirements just like a commercial bank.
Oh, got you. Okay, carry on.
Mhm.
I thought they were still categorized, but even the church, they making money. They need to give something to us instead of buying pasta, that Rolls Royce or that jet.
Now that is a decision of its members.
No, they only tithing. Oh yeah, you know what these people doing with that money? I don't know. I don't think they're serving the purpose they're supposed to serve. But then that's another story.
Yeah, that's another story. But again, it turns to its members.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are profit organizations.
But you only give your 10%. Now you trusting that these people do the right thing with the 10%.
Yes, and that don't always happen. Then again, like I say, it's for the members.
I still think the law need to come in some regards, because that's what they're doing with the churches in the States now. They're trying to get, some type of supervisory, something for them, because these people, they're running out. But I
Mhm.
understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. It's the members. I understand.
Mhm.
Ms. Archer, I have a question.
Go ahead.
In terms of the trust, you said once you establish a trust, the asset becomes legally owned by the trust, right?
Trustee.
By the trustee. Let's just say if you have an income producing property, say a shopping plaza or whatever. Once you establish the trust, the income that the plaza generates, it would then go to the trust. Okay. And say if you wanted to still have access to the funds, you essentially set it up, because in when you do that, you wanted to say go to your spouse or children as a better ease of transfer than a will, but while you're still alive, to still get access to some of the funds, you yourself have to be named as a beneficiary.
Correct.
Okay.
Because if you're not named as a beneficiary, you're not entitled to anything.
Okay.
Right.
So at that point, yourself and whoever your name as beneficiary would now receive the proceeds when they distribute.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, her point, you're talking about the shares in the shopping plaza, right?
No, we're talking about
when shops who renting from, when they pay rent, so the income generated from the plaza. I just own the building, and stores rent their shop space from me.
So the building itself,
yeah,
now belongs to the trustee. I just using the word belong so you can understand when I say the legal title. Remember, when it comes to property, a property has two interests in it. It has a legal interest and it has an equitable interest. In order to transfer property, you must have both interests, which means you must own that property, what we call in fee simple absolute in possession. You cannot transfer something if you have a mortgage on it.
Correct.
You have to own it straight out. But once you transfer that legal title goes to the trustee, And that equitable interest goes to the beneficiaries. And that equitable interest is what gives the beneficiaries the right to sue.
So I want to play devil's advocate here. So if the government wants to build a road directly through the middle of your shopping plaza and you have that property in a trust, can they not then, I guess, challenge the trust?
No, they will go to the trustees to make a decision. And the trustees will, a trustee has to always act in the best interest of the beneficiaries and the trust as a whole. So the trustees is not going to negotiate with the government whereby the assets of the trust will be at a loss.
Right.
But the government have an interest anyway, right?
Hmm?
The government have an interest anyway in that shopping plaza, depending on where it is.
No, what she's saying is that the government wants to pass a road through your plaza. Don't forget now,
Okay.
the government has a right to acquire land.
Property, right.
They can by law. Because when it comes to land, whenever you purchase a piece of land, you purchase an interest in that land.
Yeah, we right back to this interest. That's what I was saying. I was saying they have an interest. So the trustees, to me, can't tell them no because
No, yeah.
They just have to make sure that they put the trust itself first, which means that they must make sure that they're getting a fair price for the land.
Oh, okay. I got it. So these people are trusted to manage your funds so they can invest it as they please.
Yes. They will follow it. Okay. The set law can actually say, here's the assets, manage and administer it. Or the set law, if he is savvy about investments, direct the trustees as to how to invest his assets. But be mindful, if he gives instructions and the trust begin to lose assets, he cannot sue the trustee.
Oh, wow.
That is what you call a settler-directed trust, because you are telling me how to invest your assets. But if on the other hand, you are making all the decision as a trustee on how to invest the assets and you incur a loss, me as a beneficiary, I am going to sue you.
So like how COVID happened or you know, a recession happened, like something, I don't know if you call it natural. I don't know, but something beyond your control. You know, of course, if you invest in stocks and stuff like that, you would be at a loss, but not at your fault.
No, but let's
Can
just,
you still sue?
let's go to COVID.
Right.
Let's just say you were holding stocks in company A.
Right.
Right? Now in the newspaper, in the first 3 to 6 months of COVID, there was a lot of talk that this business or this type of business was going to be impacted by COVID. You were holding shares in this company doing this type of business, but you as a trustee did nothing.
Oh, okay.
I will sue you.
Yes, because that was your time to pull out, to
Yes.
try to sell or do whatever you have to do to mitigate. Okay, I got you.
Right.
Okay, so basically negligence on your part.
Yes.
Okay.
You see how interesting this is?
Yeah.
And you have people doing this all day long, trying to see how to manage people's money. So if you're in the trust business, then you outsource that investment side of it. And so
Right,
you
I
could
was just about to say for those
Right.
investment advisors who
investment advisor. So you sit down either with that law are that savvy, or you sit down within your trustee committee and decide what are your objectives, what are your strategy. Because I could give you my assets, right? And let's say my children are only 1, 2, and 3 years old. But in my trust deed, I said, like I was giving the example, at 18, I want this to happen. At 25, I want this to happen. You as a trustee got to make sure, carrying your projections out, that you will be able to generate that income to meet those objectives. So you got to monitor
Question.
how and you're investing.
There's a segregation or distinction between a trust company and a wealth management company, correct?
Well, a trust company is licensed to conduct trust business by the central bank. Wealth management company is a trust company because you're managing wealth. You understand what I mean?
No.
If I'm a trust company, we have trust companies all over. We have Credit Trust, Pictet Trust, whatever bank and trust company. They have to do trust business. They have a license to do banking business. So what they offer to their client are wealth management tools. So when you come in and you say, I want to establish, then they sit down with you and ask you, how would you like us to structure? What exactly are you looking for? Are you looking for wealth preservation? Are you looking for estate planning? Do you intend to take part in the investments? Where are your assets located? How much are they worth? Who are your beneficiaries? What jurisdiction do they live in? Then they need tax advice to come in because you need to see how to structure it whereby you pay lower taxes. So you have a trust license. The company has a trust license and a banking license. So you could open an account. But you offer wealth management tools because your products is geared towards the wealthy.
Right.
And so all of those companies you see here that has trust in its name, that these are the tools that they offer. So those persons out Lyford Key and Albany and all the ones that you don't see who don't live here, they manage their assets for them. So you see why there's always a lot of attraction internationally on the Bahamas. Because they look at the amount of assets that we manage on our books. If you look when they publish around April every year in the newspapers, if a company is a bank and trust company, you would see on this balance sheet, it'll say assets under management. Those assets under management, those millions and billions, are these wealth management tools.
Right. So what's the difference between AUA and AUM?
One is
they're one and the same.
One is assets under administration and one is assets under management.
So there's a different fee structure? Because to me, that's the same thing.
Under management means that you are actually managing those assets. The other one is under administration, which is different from management. So assets under management is the total value of the investment that is being managed by that trust company on behalf of investors. So you'll even see it when you have funds.
Mm.
So assets under administration is total assets. And what you do is you just provide administrative services for those assets. And then you charge a fee for that.
You can also make commission off
Did you?
your services as well, correct?
Yeah. Assets under administration, assets under management, you still have to pay fees.
Hefty fees, from what I can see.
Say hefty fees? Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, don't forget now, when you enter in that world of trust, that is, I might as well call it like a lonely world. Because everything that you read, everything that you see is confidential.
It is.
There's no discussion between colleagues. You could hear a pin drop. Everybody just does their task as assigned. That's it. But we have lots of banks and trust companies here in the Bahamas. And it's a good field to get into.
It sounds interesting. Very interesting. So you said there will be an ad valorem based on the value of the asset.
Yeah.
So
Based-
that'll be, it still be a certain percentage based
Yeah.
on the value.
Mhm.
Like what range is that?
They do by percentages.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
We're not talking about a little bit of money now.
I know. I mean, you can't have jokey money doing this.
No. And you can't make mistakes either.
No.
Because you can't be.
Hmm.
So that's why you would see under the Trustee Act, there is a provision that a trust company can outsource certain functions, but there is a criteria. You cannot outsource a function to an entity that doesn't know what it's doing, which means it doesn't have the qualified staff or the experience to do the task that you're hiring them to do. And even if you hire a company
On
for
them, right?
you,
If they do that, and that company, well, you said depends on what type. Okay, confused. Okay, if they do that and they outsource to this company and they make a boo boo, that on them though, right? I could sue them.
sue who? The company?
Yes,
The beneficiary is going to sue the trust company.
right, because you went ahead and outsourced to somebody who you knew could not perform the task.
So the only way you could protect yourself is if you follow the criteria in the Trustee Act, which means that you did your due diligence.
Mm. That's risky too.
Of
But
course.
in economics, we say the higher the risk, the higher the return. So they clean it.
Of course. And that's why the persons who are in that trust arena, they have trust certifications. Because that's a particular area and has its own legal framework. That's a craft of its own.
Wow. All right, y'all, let's go for it.
That's a craft of its own. Now, another thing which you would see happening a lot is investment funds. A lot of people like to come to the Bahamas and set up funds. And it's a big business in the Bahamas. Because the
But
Bahamas,
I can't remember now. So that's like venture capitalists. They just come and they what I can't remember what the investment fund is. Is it as obvious as it sounds?
yeah, it's okay. It's like, again, you need to have a license from the Securities Commission in order to establish a fund. That's the first thing. Once you establish a fund, the Bahamas offers different types of funds. And the different types of funds depends on who's going to invest. So if you're going to establish a fund, you're going to have an administrator. You're going to need to have a custodian. That's a bank who's going to hold the assets. And of course, you need a promoter. So our famous product that we offer internationally is the Smart Fund. And that Smart Fund has lots of different funds. So you have Smart Fund 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and each one of those has a different feature in terms of the type of investor that can invest in the funds. You've never heard about these funds?
Never. You said the smart funds is the most popular type we offer?
Yeah, smart funds. So let's just say if 4 of you want to invest in a particular item, then you can establish a fund with the 4 of you, and each one of you deposit $2 million or $5 million each. And then you invest in a particular asset. So each fund has its own criteria as to how many people can invest and the kind of investor that you are. So we have a lot of people that come here just to take advantage of our investment tools. So you have a standard fund. And a standard fund is different from a professional fund or a smart fund or what we call a recognized foreign fund. So a standard fund is a legal structure. And you could have equity interests in the purpose or effect for the pooling of the investor funds. For a standard fund, there is no minimum investment by the investor. So you could have a share in that fund or you could have a participation in the fund. Now you could have a professional fund and that issues or has equity interests. And the purpose again is for the pooling of funds. The equity interest is held only by one eligible investor. There's no minimum investment by the eligible investor. And the share or the participation interest that carries an entitlement to participate in the profits or the gains of the issuer. So you put your funds in the fund, and let's just say in the prospectus, it says that you're going to invest in this particular asset. And so you're looking for a return on your fund. Then you could have a smart fund. And a smart fund 1 is an investment fund where the promoter is a financial institution, and the investors in the investment fund are also customers of the financial institution and is party to a discretionary management agreement with the financial institution. So in a Smart Fund 1, the financial institution would invite its clients to invest in a particular fund. And they would sign a discretionary management agreement, which given them the terms and conditions for the investment of the funds. A Smart Fund 2 is an investment fund that has no more than 10 investors, and they all hold an equity interest in the investment fund. And they meet the criteria of an eligible investor in a professional fund. And they have the power to appoint and remove operators of the fund. A Smart Fund 3 is an investment fund that has no more than 15 investors. So you notice that under the Smart Fund, which is one of the, I guess, the most attractive product that we have under the Investment Funds Act, each type of fund is geared towards the number of investors that you have. So the 3 has no more than 15 investors, and they holding equity interest in the investment fund. The majority of them have the power to appoint or remove the operators of the investment fund, which was operating as an exempt mutual fund under the Mutual Funds Act. Smart Fund 4 is an investment fund with a maximum of 5 investors, and they're operating as a legal entity. So they could use that fund as a holding vehicle. Smart Fund 5 is an investment fund with a maximum of 5 investors. They hold equity interests, and they operate as a private investment structure. Each investor must be a person to whom a professional fund may be offered. A Smart Fund 6 is a special purpose vehicle, and that's designed to hold the illiquid or hard to value assets of another Bahamas investment fund. So again, you see each fund has a particular purpose and it has a structure. So when you sit down with the administrator and you speak about the purpose for which you want to invest in a fund, then they structure your investment based on the type of fund that it would fit into. A Smart Fund 7 is an investment fund that may be offered on a private placement basis. And that one has up to 50 super qualified investors. And those super qualified investors had to subscribe at $500,000. So it is mainly geared towards institutional investors, such as pension funds. But of course, a natural person can also be an eligible investor. So of course, a licensor for a smart fund has to be licensed under the Securities Industries Act. Now, in addition to the investments and the funds, we also have the product which was created in 2014, the investment condominium, or called the ICON. And the ICON is a contractual relationship between one or more participants who pool their assets for the purpose of operating as an investment fund. Now, an ICON has no legal personality. which means that an icon is not a company. It is not in itself a separate entity. But when represented by an administrator, it is able to hold assets in its own name, but it is not a separate legal personality. An icon can enter into agreements. It can sue or be sued in its own name, but it is not a legal personality. It is a contractual arrangement. So an investment condominium is represented by its administrator. An administrator acting on its behalf executes all letters, contracts, agreements, deeds, and documents for the investment condominium. The administrator has the power to do all other acts and things which are necessary for the investment condominium activities. So the administrator is the person that binds the icon. And the icon is, the icon's administrator is licensed by the Securities Commission or is licensed under the Financial Corporate Service Providers Act, or it could be a bank. So how does an icon operate? An icon can have unlimited number of participants, but the minimum number is 1. Participation interests may, but need not carry voting rights. And such rights are specified in the governing regulations. Their participation in the icon are personal property, and that they are enforceable by the participants as a choice in action. The books and the records are kept by the administrator. They have annual meetings, and publicly available information on an icon is generally limited to the information contained in its certificate of establishment. So that means that the only thing you can see is the name of the icon, the name of the administrator, of course, who is licensed, the date that it was established, the statement that it is licensed as a fund, and the address in the Bahamas where you can actually serve documents on the icon. An icon cannot make or declare dividends. There are no distributions that is made to participants. Remember, it is a contractual agreement. An icon is also not liable for estate, inheritance, succession, gift, or stamp taxes. They are also exempted from VAT. An existing entity can be converted to an icon. So you could take a trust and you could convert it to an icon. You could take a partnership and convert it to an icon. You could take a company and convert it to an icon. You could take an icon and you could re-domicile it to another jurisdiction. And of course, an icon can be wound up or dissolved. And it all will be based upon the terms and conditions in the governing regulations. Unless, of course, it's being wound up by the court. Any questions, any comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Say you have a group of Bahamian investors and they want to pool their resources to invest in a property to build a rental home, and they want to distribute the profits from the rental business. I'm guessing from reading this, it would be best for them to set up some type of fund for this.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What type of fund do you think? Would it be a professional fund or a smart fund, or just a basic standard fund would suffice?
More standard, because if you're going to get a professional one, remember now, sometimes they're already structured. But I mean, you could. But notice that for professional fund, there are some limitations.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I see that.
Because you got to have a minimum amount of the investment to invest in.
Certain net worth.
First, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But a lot of foreigners come here and establish funds for different purposes.
How many Bahamians take advantage of these?
Oh, offhand, I don't know of any, but maybe they do have some. But I'm not aware of any. I've seen foreigners.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know of any locally. Not offhand.
So that is something me and a group of my friends, about 5 of us, are interested in, like serious about. So when I saw that,
Mm-hmm.
that may be the way to go.
Yeah, and then what you do that is you spread the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But as you can see, we do have a lot of products. That's why you see a lot of people are coming to the Bahamas because of the products that we offer, the proximity, our stability, economic and politically. They look at our infrastructure, because we can talk about our infrastructure in the next class. And they also look at our tax regime. Of course, we've always had this pressure, and we're still having that pressure that we need to impose more taxes. But as an international wealth management center, if we increase our taxes, of course, that means that the wealthy people will find other jurisdictions where they don't have to spend so much money on taxes. They don't mind paying the fees. But when it comes to taxes, if they're going to have to pay more in taxes, they will move their assets to other jurisdictions. But one thing that they love the Bahamas for is its confidentiality. And that's our major seller. So in a lot of jurisdictions, they follow the common law requirement that as a part of your banking or as a part of your financial duty is to maintain confidentiality. But in the Bahamas, we have enshrined it in our laws, which makes it more difficult for people to come and pressure the Bahamas to provide information. Because that's the cornerstone of our financial sector, is that we maintain our clients' confidentiality. Any comments?
Question on these funds. Who are offering those?
Who?
Yeah.
A lot of the offshore banks offer
Oh,
funds to their clients.
okay.
A lot of them offer those. Now, one other corporate structure that we didn't discuss is partnerships. Now, you can have a general partner or you could have a limited partner. General partners are the ones that run the business. Limited partners do not run the business. So a general partner run the business and they have unlimited liability. A general partner can enter into all letters, contracts, deeds on behalf of the limited partnership. If the assets in limited partnership are inadequate, the general partner is liable for the debts and the obligations of that limited partnership. Any property in a limited partnership that is conveyed to a general partner in the name of the limited partnership is deemed to be held by the general partner and is held on trust as an asset of the limited partnership. A general partner is not required to have a trust license under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act. A general partner can also take an interest in that partnership as a limited partner. So, like I said at the beginning, a limited partner doesn't run the business. And they have limited liability. A limited partner does not take part in the conduct of the business. And it does so by doing one or more of the following: being a contractor, an agent, or employee of the limited partnership. Acting as a surety, approving amendments of the partnership agreement, consulting or advising a general partner with respect to the business of a limited partnership. A limited partner has the benefit of limited liability from the date of registration. A limited partner is not liable for the debts or obligation of the limited partnership, except of course, if it's contained within the partnership agreement. A limited partnership has an exemption for 50 years from the date of its certificate of registration. So it doesn't pay any business license fees, doesn't pay any taxes, no capital gains taxes. Is exempt from exchange control. There's no inheritance, no estate, no succession, no gift tax, no rate, no duty. Is also exempt from stamp duty. So you can see there's any type of product you could think about. In the Bahamas, we have it, we offer it as a part of wealth management or asset protection. And this is a skill that we promote after doing this for so many years. Any comments? It sounds like an area to get into, right?
I was just about to ask, so if you wanted to be employed with one of the local trust companies, you need some sort of certification?
Yeah.
Hmm.
You need trust certification, trust law 1, trust law 2, and then you move into STEP,
Hmm.
which is an international certification.
I mean, they
So-
always seem very overworked to me, but I don't know.
Yes, they do work, and they do work not necessarily 9 to 5, depends on your position, because you know you have the world. So you have the people that actually do the accounting, then you have people that do the administrative part, whether that's in investments or in due diligence, or persons that actually keep the files, maintaining the files. And then of course you have people that do the actual relationship management, that meet the clients.
I mean, email management, because they don't relate very much.
Yeah, but some do come to Nassau,
So,
or the relationship manager goes to their house. And then depends on the company. There are some where the relationship manager flies to where their clients are. Depends on who the client is.
mhm.
But of course, it is a very demanding job. But it is interesting. I don't know of anyone who was in the trust business who would have left and went into banking or went into insurance or something else. They normally stay in that field.
I thought you were in trust, Miss Archer. You're in lawyer.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
but I
So,
studied.
oh, you studied trust law as well. Well, all of that incorporated, eh? You still have to do some of that.
No, it depends.
Oh, okay.
Go to school.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends. Some people have different areas. Mine was more on the corporate side. So I did company and trust law, maritime law. So there are different areas you can go into. So don't forget now, I would have done in terms of career wise, I would have learned trust from a policy perspective, being a former regulator. So you had to know a little bit about everything. If you're going to supervise banks and trusts and private trust companies, you had to know how they work. So those are the main wealth management tools that'll be a part of your exam. That sounds exciting.
When is the exam? Did they say?
I don't know. Miguel didn't give you all the date.
I think I saw on the thing end of July, the
Last Saturday in July.
outline. Yeah.
Okay.
And that right around the corner, how these months go, and that tomorrow.
Yeah. So next week is our last class, and then you have 1 month to study. Yeah, man, you can pass this. First go.
Oh, you have a second go.
Yeah, second go. But you don't want to have a second go
Oh,
because
I didn't even know that was an option.
yeah, you have an option for a second go, but you don't want that because it depends. because every time we do, at least for my segment, I update the information. So say when you do it now, you would use the figures in this handout. If you were to do it a second time or third time, all the figures that you see in the retirement section that I would have gotten from the actuarial report from NIB, all those figures would change. So you will have to go back to Miguel and get a new copy of that. So you don't want,
all of us passing this.
so all of you all have to pass this.
Yeah, we are.
You have to pass this on the first go,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So I will see you all next week. And that'll be our last class.
Roger, what are we going over in next class? So I could just see if I could attempt to read ahead.
Say attempt.
I'm being honest.
We can look at the Computer Misuse Act. We're gonna talk about, I think I have a handout on here on our strategy, the government's e-business strategy.
So all of these would be in the handout that we should have picked up. I need
Yeah.
to go pick mine up. I thought everything was digital as well, but I don't have that.
Yeah, that might have been a little bit too much to scan. And
Got you.
there's the VAT guide, the business license guide. And these are generally for information. I don't think I wrote any questions on VAT. If I did, I will tell you all next week, but I don't think so.
Okay,
don't-
can you go over what would be supposed to be looking, focusing on for the test?
I'll try. From my section, I'll try.
So we'll do that next week.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Like I say, I'll try. Without giving you more information and what you need to know.
Yeah, because reading over some of these things, like when I went back up to the custom, sound like a lot of nothing when you're reading it.
You think so?
Like it's a lot of it's so much information. It almost feel like someone just threw in there. I
No,
was like, it'll be good to know like what to focus your attention on when you have so much information.
but I only could speak to my part.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do that next class.
Your part is the bulk of it, I understand.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that's most important.
Yeah. So I'll just guide you as to where you need to, what you need to know. All right. That sounds good, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next week, same time.
Okay, yes, sir.
Right.
Y'all enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Night.
I cannot express how